Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Live from Redfearn's Bar, brought to you by Barnsley Football Club Supporters Trust. I say it's very special, not just because we seem to have got the technology working, touch wood, on our unlucky for some 13 session, but because we're coming to you all the way from Calgary, Canada, and so far so good. But before we introduce the guest, it's just a reminder for those watching through Facebook and Twitter that all our previous interviews of the likes of Mick McCarthy, Neil Redfearn and Brian Howard are over on our YouTube channel. So keep subscribing, folks, to push those numbers up. If you're already on YouTube, it's the bottom right-hand corner and there's a little tiny image of some Barnsley shirts on a washing line. Hover over that, click subscribe, and jobs are good. And selfless promoting over, our guest tonight played over 260 games for the Super Reds from 1993 to 1996, scoring over 35 goals during his time at Oakwell. Born in Lambeth, London, he covered more blades of grass in those 6 years than a lot of players do during their whole career. Massively popular with the Oakwell faithful, he scored his first Barnsley goal in a crucial victory against Leeds United at Ellen Road, as well as a memorable brace in a 2-1 win over Sheffield United. Twice he came close to being in the playoffs, only to be let down by goal difference and the creation of the Premier League, which, you know, a little bit like when we lost out to Arsenal all those years ago. All the way from Calgary, good evening, Brendan O'Connell.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah. Bit different with the time change.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Better let everyone know it's lunchtime where you are.
It is 12 o'clock. Yeah.
First of all, how are you doing, and how did you end up in Canada?
My wife brought me over here. Really, I've been coming back since 2006, and I made the jump in 2012. So I've been here ever since.
And I know you're working on lots of different soccer projects, or we'll stick with football projects, actually, shall we? Can you just let us know what they all are?
I wear three hats, really. I work with the University of Calgary, with the football team there, or soccer team as they call it here. I don't want to use that word too much because I get a bit of stick for that. But I work from August to November with that entity, and then I'm the sporting director of a club called Blizzards. And they have it's a not-for-profit club. It has about 1,000 kids, mixed 50-50 boys and girls. And it ranged from tier 1, which is the elite side, to kids that just want to have fun and enjoy it. And my third hat is I coach usually on a Friday morning with the Vancouver Whitecaps elite group. And that preparing boys and mentoring young boys that are going to go on and go into residency over in Vancouver.
And how strict is the lockdown over there, and what are you doing at the moment with the kids? Are they not training?
No one's training. We're in total lockdown. Canadians really conform and they stick to the rules, and it's been very, very quiet. We haven't lifted anything. All fields and permits have been banned or not been submitted until the end of August. So I think our league structure is finished. It's just a matter of trying to get kids then later on maybe to get them on the field for a little run. But at this moment in time, summer is in lockdown. It's slowly opening up, but I think from what I read and believe in some of the documents, is the kids carry most of this virus and they just don't want it to spread. So yeah, quiet for me this summer.
And look, knowing that hockey is to Canadians what football is to the Brits, have you had to adopt the Flames as your team?
Not really. I've been a couple of times. Canadians took me to the game, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the national games more when all the stars come together, like when Canada plays Russia or the US. They're the big games. I enjoy that. But really, the Flames I've only been a couple of times. It's okay. They love it. But when they come and see our sport in England, they can't believe the difference in the crowds and the abuse that they give each other. It's just two different things, you know. They always say over here, you know, why are you guys so mean to each other, you know, with regards to supporters. So it makes me laugh. It's just two spectrums of it, you know. Yeah. They're a bit crazy in England. Over here they're quieter.
Well, it's a little bit rich when they let people fight on the ice rink, you know.
Well, that's been eased out of the game, I think. It's been eased out, you know. Well, I'll tell you how polite they are. And I remember the in Vancouver, the Canucks, they missed out on playoffs and they've started rioting in Vancouver. And the next day, the fans came out to clean up.
Brilliant.
So they smashed the place up and then cleaned up the next day. So that's what it's like here.
Well, great stuff. Look, it's the same with every interview. We go out and we gather as many questions as we can from the fans and then put them in some form of sensible and reasonable order spanning your career, which puts us at Portsmouth in 1985 when you joined them as an apprentice at 18. Was that the first professional club you trained with, and was that the standard option for kids growing up around Addlestone in Surrey?
Fulham, well, most of the boys either went to Wimbledon, QPR, or Fulham. Really, I was probably the only one. I went to Fulham as a schoolboy, and just as I was coming up to the period where you're going to make a decision to be an apprentice, the manager then was a guy called Bobby Campbell. He left to go to Portsmouth, and he took me with him. So he invited me to come there, and I became an apprentice, which is probably last of the apprentice scheme, which meant you had to do some jobs and stuff. My job was to clean dressing rooms and look after a few pros, and that's what happened. So Fulham to Portsmouth with Bobby Campbell, and then Alan Ball took over after him.
And you found first team football at Exeter over a couple of seasons. Then you ended up at Burnley in '88 and finished top scorer for them in Division 4. Were you predominantly being used as a striker at this point, and was that your favourite position?
At Burnley, I was. I originally, as a young apprentice trying to make my way in the game, I was what they would call a utility player, and they call them hybrid players now. And I played right back, in midfield, up front. I could play really anywhere. I had a lot of energy, so it seemed to work for the clubs I played for. I did a little bit of that at Exeter. I played right back for a period because we had some problems there and we didn't have a big squad. But predominantly at Burnley, I played up front.
And it was March 1990 when the magical moment came and you joined the Super Reds. You jumped up to Division 2 when you signed for Barnsley via 4 months on loan at Huddersfield in Division 3. Was that a whirlwind 4 months in terms of 3 clubs in such a short space of time?
It was, to be honest, and Barnsley came out of the blue. I'd come back off loan from Huddersfield. I was into probably my second game with Burnley, and I remember Ron Futcher saying to me, "You've got Barnsley watching you today," and I didn't realise it was my last game. And he said that they fancy you there. He says it's a great little club. My brother's there. You'll enjoy it if you go there. And so on the Monday they made an offer for me, and I went across to speak to Mel Machin, and I just always got the impression that I was going to be a squad player. I think he'd never seen me play. He was more used to seeing people like Clive Allen and those types. So it was John Benson that had pushed it through more than anything. And I just remember going in, and Gary Fleming was coming out of the office while I was going in, and I had to see Mel first and then pop across and see Owen Hand at Huddersfield because they wanted me as well. And it was a no-brainer for me. I think once Barnsley had come in for me, I knew they were struggling, they could go down, but I just wanted to play in the first division, what it was then, and that was my opportunity. It didn't matter how long I was going to be there for. I wanted to play at that level. So that's how it came about.
And speaking of that level, can you remember how much the quality improved when you made those 3 quick moves from Burnley Division 4, Huddersfield Division 3 and Barnsley Division 2?
Well, there was a big difference from the 4th to Division 1, simply because I think in the lower divisions, you've always got a mix of, then it was young players trying to make their way and the older players that were coming down from the higher levels still trying to earn a living. So at Burnley, with people like Leighton James and Ian Britton, the late Ian Britton, and Peter Daniels, people like that were in their 30s, and so it was really tough. We used to call it trench warfare football. It was you had to be fit. The ball wasn't on the floor much. Pitches weren't the best. So obviously when the gap is massive, to be honest. But it's a great place. I'd never change it. It was a great place for me to learn the game and learn off older players. So.
And when you joined, we had the likes of Steve Agnew, Ian Banks, Joe Joyce, Jerry Taggart in the squad that season. Were they the standout players that you remember, or were the others that you noticed straight away when you got on the training pitch?
They were standout players, and they went. Banger was a great player to play with in midfield. I enjoyed playing with him. Aggie was the star really for Barnsley, but I think I had 1 season with him before he was moving on to Blackburn. And then obviously Tags was the young one coming through, and he was very highly thought of. Owen Archdeacon was another one that was was a great player and at the time, and Flem was so consistent. He would hoover up everything and sniff out a bit of danger. So that they were very, very good players. I was in awe of them, really, because when I first went there, I went into the away dressing room. I knew I was going to be this squad player, and I was put in the away dressing room. The first dressing room was up the corridor, and I wanted to get out of that dressing room and get in that dressing room, and it happened after the Leeds game. I scored, and I got moved out, and I eventually got in to be with those guys. And they were, like I said, I was in awe of them, coming from a lower division, and them as players made me better.
And you mentioned that you were joining essentially what was a relegation fight. We only lost 2 games from the last 12 that season, 5 wins and 5 draws. How sweet was it coming off the bench and scoring your first goal at Ellen Road in what was essentially the crucial win of the season?
Well, to start with, I was just so happy to be in that group and in that division for as long as I could stay in that division. And I remember travelling to Elland Road from Burnley. I met the team there, and it was the atmosphere was unbelievable. I struggled to get through the traffic. I underestimated it, but I got there, and I just enjoyed being the sub. The atmosphere was electric. Seeing the Barnsley fans over in the corner, and then Mel making that double substitution, and I just wanted to get on and get running around and get after things and see if I could get myself a goal, and it happened.
And what did you think when Mervyn Day comes out? And I don't know what he did, but he just kind of went past the ball and left you the open goal.
Well, there was an old saying that strikers follow the ball to the death, and I could see the hesitation with Mervyn and I think it was Fairclough, and they both hesitated. So I, like a typical striker, I latched onto it and poked it in.
And a certain Vinnie Jones had a couple of tantrums that game. Can you remember if he was as fearsome as he likes to make out when he was on the pitch?
No, I don't remember him at all, to be honest. He didn't jump out at me. He didn't really get involved in the game as such. I mean, he had big long throw-ins and he could probably get after you, but no, he didn't really. He didn't really. There was other players in that league that were more they were harder to play against, to be honest. But he was in a very successful team, right? So they got promoted that year.
His back's worse than his bite, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Your first full season at Oakwell followed, and we finished 8th in Division 2. How good did it feel getting Player of the Year in your first full season with the Reds?
Well, it was an amazing achievement to be acknowledged by all the supporters, whether it's the disabled supporters, club supporters. A wonderful achievement, and it was a memorable year for me because, like I said, I'd gone to the club to, Mel had bought me really, and he knew he thought I was going to be a squad player, and for me to break into the team, work hard and break into the team, and then hold down my position was a great thing for me. So it was a great year. It set me up really well with the fans, and so it was that was a wonderful year. Great memories that.
And for those that don't know just how close we were to making the playoffs, we missed out on goal difference to Middlesbrough. We were only a point away from Brighton, who were in 6th, and 4 points away from Millwall in 5th. And our goal difference was a million times better than Brighton. So if we'd have got that extra point, we'd have been up there. Can you remember the twists and turns of that promotion chasing season?
I remember little bits. I don't know how we got to that stage, to be honest, because I played most of the season with a double hernia, and I was supposed to have an operation just before Christmas, and Mel had convinced me you didn't have to train during the week, train Thursday, Friday and play. So I don't know how I got Player of the Year and get in the position that we were in. And Steve Agnew was struggling with an ankle injury all season. He needed an operation, and so it was an amazing achievement to get to that. The twists and turns, I just remember, I don't know if it's right, I remember Brighton beating Millwall. So we were in the playoffs at one time, and we were celebrating, and we were making our way down into the dressing room, I think, and news had come through Remo that Brighton had scored, I think, in about 91st minute. It was a Dean Wilkins shot from about 30 yards, and it affected us in some way.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he scored in the 91st minute. The guy that doesn't score goals, he scored a 30-yarder, and we were just sat in the dressing room, gobsmacked, you know. And it changed it. I don't know how it changed it or the point system, but that game did have an effect on us.
And there was also, just before the end of the season, it was probably over Easter, we had 3 defeats in 5 days against Blackburn, Ipswich and Wednesday, which I think that probably made our lives a lot harder as well. Can you remember those 3 games and playing 3 games in 5 days that was so important?
Not really, but they're just naming those clubs, they're tough games, right? Yeah, they're big clubs. And like I said, I was struggling with, I could only, so you saying that playing five games, I don't know how I did that if I played, because I had a double hernia and Steve Agnew was struggling. So we were probably short on numbers, and that had probably something to do with it. The squad probably wasn't big enough.
Well, you probably answered my next question there anyway, but I was going to ask you, what do you think we could have added to the team just to get us up that one place that season? But you're probably just going to say fitness.
Everyone being fit and a little bit of luck would have helped us along the way, and maybe a new face every now and again. We were never one, while I was there, to go into the market and make a big signing as such. So it's probably, if you look through the games, there's probably a game we could have won, or a draw we could have won. But I think the main part was, obviously I wasn't 100%, and our main player, which was Aggie, was struggling with his ankle a little bit, I believe.
So season of 1991 saw the club bring in players such as Redders, Charlie Bishop, Steve Davis. Were you impressed with the players coming in, and did you think we were set to build on the season we'd had before?
Well, I knew Steve from Burnley, and he was a great pro. I didn't know too much about Charlie Bishop, but he was a very good player, very, very quick, could read danger and everything. Charlie was a good lad. And Redders was Mr. Barnsley, isn't he? I roomed with Redders for 5 of the 6 years I was there, so I know a lot about him. He knows a lot about me. That was a big signing, and I obviously was looking forward to playing midfield with him.
And things didn't really click for us that year or the year after. We finished 16th and 13th respectively. Why do you think it was that we just didn't kick on like everybody hoped?
I don't know. It's probably Mel might have changed the formation. I can't remember. It might have changed the formation a little bit and tinkering a little bit with the team. Not being, I'm not sure. We didn't. I don't think we ever had the money to bring players in just to liven things up a little bit. So I think it was we've gone through a transition. Aggie might have left, I think, gone to Blackburn. That was a big loss. Ian Banks might have left. He was a regular player. He might have left. And so when you lose a really couple of strong players, the leadership gets passed on a little bit, and I think it's a bit of a transition, and I think that might have played a little part in it.
I asked this next question because more recently, similar opinions were mentioned in relation to when we had Paul Hart as our manager, only for Andy Ritchie, Rick Holden and Dale Tong to tell us something completely different. But when Machin was in charge, to some Barnsley fans, it felt like he lacked energy, positivity and a little bit of charisma. Is that how it was with the players, or was it something completely different?
Mel wasn't that personality. You're right. He was very deep thinking person. He was very caring, though. I remember when he left, he was upset. He never really showed his emotions that much, and sometimes you do need that. But players have to motivate themselves, really. No, I got on well with Mel. He signed me. I was loyal to him. I wanted to work hard for him. It just, after a period of time, was it four seasons, Mel? Then you're under a bit of pressure to deliver, and the expectations would have been high with John Dennis and the board and the fans. So you've only got so much time, and then you probably got Viv and Danny lurking around in the background that were going to come in. So the pressure was on a little bit.
And you mentioned at Burnley you were played as a striker. What did you think when Mel first approached you about playing midfield?
Just trying to think. I remember him saying to me, "Look, I want you to go into midfield and work hard and not play like a midfield player." I remember him saying that. Don't start playing like a midfield player. Run from deep. Redders was in there because Redders was the one who could get on the ball and play and connect things. And we worked it out, myself and Redders, and it didn't bother me because I had played there before. But it was a master stroke really, because I had a lot of energy and we needed that in there, and I could get a goal, and I think he could see that.
And then it was all changing. Viv Anderson joins, very high profile player, an appointment, brings Danny Wilson with him. How different was it in those first few training sessions with Viv in charge?
I think it was probably a bit of a shock for me, Butts and Tags, because we used to go to Sheffield and have a pint every now and again, and Viv and Danny used to be in the same pub. And so him to come in as the boss was a bit, but they came in as the new sort of modern day managers. Really, they understood players and how they all worked, and they were very, very good. They talked to us. They didn't distance themselves. There wasn't the boss and us. They trained with us well as much as they could. They were both riddled with old war wounds, but I personally enjoyed playing with both of them. They were great with me. I think I was coming to an end of a 3-year deal from Mel, and Viv signed me for another 3 years. So I enjoyed my time with both of them, even though it was short-lived. Even though it was short-lived with Viv, he only stayed a season, I think.
Yeah. And how are the dynamics between him and Danny in terms of taking training, team talks, tactics, etc.?
They had it tough. They were both playing at the time, so being a player boss was difficult. Coming in at when you're in the battle out there and coming in with Viv and Danny, and you're trying to do a team talk, and you probably don't see it as much as you do from the sidelines. I think Eric took over most of it, and he would get a grip of all, the tactical side of it. And if things needed to change, you probably would have had a word. They used to drift off into the shower room a little bit and have 5 minutes, and then come back in and say, right, we've got to change it around a little bit. So I think Eric was instrumental from the sidelines.
Yeah, a lot of people have said the same. And did it come as a shock to you and the squad when it was announced that Viv was leaving after a year?
It was, to be honest. I think we knew that he was close to Brian Robson, but they kept it under wraps for sure. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock, but Danny came in, and it was just business as usual.
So Danny takes over. We're blessed with yourself, Redders, Danny as midfield options. He's now in charge. With you and Redders almost on telepathic wavelengths, how did Danny use himself and the two of you, and what was the message when he got the job?
Well, Danny, he never trained during the week. He had arthritis in his ankle, I can remember, and Redders used to hammer him saying, "Gaffy, have you got a pebble in your shoe?" Because he used to hobble around, the training ground, and we had a great little system where Danny would sit and he'd get on the ball and connect things, and it just gave myself and Redders the license just to gallop on and get in the box and go for goals. And it was a perfect ingredient for us, really. Danny was great at that. He could see a pass and connect things up, and it was perfect.
We missed out on the playoffs again that season by 1 place, finishing 6th. This was down to the Premier League being reduced by 2 teams, so only 2 teams went up that year. I know teams know the rules before the start of the season, everything like that, but does it add that little bit more frustration that any other year we would have been in the playoffs?
I think there was from what I can remember, there was a lot of things stacked against us. We had the ground was going through a big transition, and probably money wasn't available as much to strengthen the squad while we were flying along. You could always do with a new face here and there just to liven things up. Too many draws, maybe a draw when we could have had a win. with certain games. I remember, Southend losing to them, and games like Oldham, 1-0 and draws and a few suspect losses didn't help us. But we had a very, very strong squad, good players, and I think luck wasn't on our side.
And you mentioned good players. That season we had experienced pros. We had yourself, Gary Fleming, Redders, Archdeacon, Peyton, and then we started supplementing it with young players coming through: Eden, Azy Moses, Liddell, Martin Bullock, etc. How good was that side that finished sixth that year with all the odds stacked against them?
I can remember we had to call on Mal Shotton, I think, and he had to dust his boots off and get on the field. So Mal had to make an appearance. Barnsley always had a good youth system, and I think that was probably from Eric being involved with the kids. And there were some great kids coming through, and they went on to have a great career. Lids, Andy Liddell, Nicky Eden, Watto. So they were all very, very good players, and they were just bedding in, Jacko, I think Jacko, bless him, was getting involved maybe. So very, very good youth system. I don't know what they're like now if they're bringing kids through, but we were very, very strong. They were good players.
And we can't not ask about the 2 goals at home to Sheffield United. Can you talk us through the emotions of the first one and the second one?
I remember coming into the car park, and Ada used to run the car park, and she used to like military. She was like the military, wouldn't let anyone in. And as I was walking through into the ground, she said to me, you're 25-1 today to get 2 goals and us win. So chuff and get your act together. And I just remember going into the ground, 25-1. So it just spurred me on a little bit. And I remember the atmosphere. We got after them a little bit, and I think the ball broke and Pates had a shot, and I followed up. They might have equalised, I think, and then I got another one. But that was a memorable game. I think before I signed for Barnsley, I wanted to play in the Yorkshire derbies. I achieved that no matter what would have happened. I achieved that when I went to Leeds, and I played against Sheffield United in the next game, I think, or the game before it. And so to score 2 goals and to score against Leeds is, what can I say? It was wonderful.
And which goal was your best Barnsley goal?
Best Barnsley goal?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the ones that meant a lot was obviously Leeds. That was scoring and playing a part and keeping us in the division was a big one, and always scoring against a rival team, Sheffield. So they're the ones that stick in my mind, simply because of the atmosphere and everything else that surrounds it, and the fans want to beat them, and we want to beat them. So they're the ones that stick in my mind. I think if there was one that I had to pick, and it would be Leeds, simply because everything that went on and staying up.
Yeah, perfect. Look, the following season isn't as successful, but we're still a good team. We're playing good football in the Danny, and we finished, a respectable 10th. An influx of Dutch players arrived that season. Just one in particular. Could you tell straight away that Ariane Dizou was going to be as good as he ended up?
I think so. I think his first game was against Ipswich. I can't remember. He made his debut against Ipswich away. And we could tell he had big boots to fill. I think Tags had left, and he just fitted in straight away. He's a great man. Even though he used to get a bit of stick about Shez, tulips, and he used to wear these white socks and get a little bit of stick off him. But he was a mighty player. Had a great attitude. Never said too much on the field, and he always led by example. And eventually, I remember being part of the group at Wigan as the coaches when we signed him. We signed him at Wigan from Barnsley.
Yeah.
And simply because he's just has a great attitude towards the game. And I wasn't surprised he'd go on and achieve the things he did.
We also had Young Mulumbu on loan that season, who basically spent his entire spell in the middle of the pitch just passing the ball. Was that a bit surreal considering his career at Liverpool? But also, how did you cope with someone who just didn't do any running?
I didn't play with him. I was injured. I had a really bad Achilles injury in the summer. I needed an operation. I was out for about 6 months or 7 months. But Redders played with him, and I think Shez. But they would always say, they'd have to do a double shift with him because he was a marvelous passer. But I remember Redders always saying to me, Redders, you just get me the ball and go get the ball and give it to me. Because the Redders have to scamper off and get the ball and give it to Jan. But that's just the way it was, I didn't play with him, but I was obviously around him because I was going through my rehab then. Every day I'd have to go up to, is it the Metrodome?
Yeah, Metrodome.
It's still there. I'd have to go up to Metrodome and work on my rehab. I wanted to get fit, so. But I'm sure he made Redders and Shez work.
And look, that same season, did you know when you scored in that last home game against Luton that was going to be your last game at Oakwell for us?
I didn't really. I didn't. How many games was there to go? I
think there was 3. There was 2 away games after that, I think.
Yeah, I think in those days my contract was coming to an end, and I didn't. I wasn't really in talks with the chairman or Danny about renewing it, and so no, I didn't really see it coming. I think just when we got to the last game, we all settled down to talk about contracts, and that's when I knew that I'd probably be moving on, and that in those days you probably had to get offered the same basic, and I got offered that, but the sign-on fees were different. I wanted to stay so much. I didn't want any more. I'd said that to Danny, and I'd said that to John Dennis, can we find a way that I can stay? And it just didn't, I think in the end you kind of know, well, I was going through pre-season, Danny was probably looking at other players, and I knew that I was on the market, and it was disappointing for me, but that's football, and you've got to move on and have another challenge.
And you left for Charlton, and then, like you say, you played for Wigan. Did those clubs ever feel like home in the way that you've talked about Barnsley in the past?
No. I went to as I moved off to Charlton. Never really had the spirit that I had at Barnsley. And I had 6 seasons at Barnsley, some wonderful times. Even to the days in the beginning where we'd go up to the players' lounge up in those porter cabins, and then go down to the supporters, the social club, and be with the supporters. Well, I never had that. The players all lived in locally, Oxspring or Penistone. Jerry was there, and Lee Butler. We all had a social gathering every now and again. And when you go to clubs like Charlton, you've got the M25 that the fans all know. You go onto the M25, it's horrendous. Everyone lived in Essex, Kent, Surrey. You rocked up into the training ground, and then and you went home. And I never had that real closeness to the fans, and I never had the closeness with the players. Even though I room with Mick Salmon, he lives in Vancouver, and I go and see him often. He's the only one I've kept in contact with, but never had that at Charlton, and I never really had it at Wigan. Even though we were getting a lot of Barnsley players. Lee Butler was there at the time. Wayne Biggins was there or just leaving when I signed, and we brought in a lot of ex-players from Barnsley, so we kind of got that back again. But I never ever got that village feeling and that closeness. Never got it again.
And I know you've answered this before in various interviews, and one you did with the club just over a year ago. But do you ever get frustrated that you didn't stay at Oakwell and take part in that Premier League promotion season?
I wouldn't say it was frustration. I think when I self-reflect now that I'm a bit older and think back, it was out of my hands. I wanted to stay so much, and would have done anything with regards to contracts to stay, but they just wanted to. I think they wanted to refresh things and bring in new players, and it worked for them. And they were an amazing team that year. I played against them not at Charlton, but certainly when I came to Oakwell, and they were phenomenal. They got their system worked out, and he brought in some great players. And I think if there was a wish and I could rewind it, I wish those players would have come in maybe a season or 2 before, and then I might have been part of that. But there was players there. Like I was pleased for Redders and the youngsters. Lids and Nicky. Redders had stuck at it for so long, and he was a major part in getting them there. So no, I was pleased for them. I was pleased for them.
And last few questions now, in no particular order. If we name some of the players and staff from your time at Barnsley, can you give us an honest Brendan O'Connell assessment of how you remember them? Starting with Jerry Taggart.
Jerry's a good friend of mine. He's godfather to my eldest son. So I think it's no secret that we used to socialise together, holiday together. And
what about that first holiday?
The first holiday.
Yeah.
The first holiday was I had two guys I knew in Burnley, and they had two fellas pull out, and they were going to a Greek island, Eos. And we'd never ever been to anywhere like that, myself and Jerry. Jerry was just coming back from a tour of Canada with Nornand. He came back with this big cowboy hat, met me at the airport. We went to Athens and got on this. I just remember getting on this ferry, and we went to Santorini and then went to this island, Eos, and it's just full of backpackers, not like they would go to now with Dubai and places like that. And it was just backpackers, and we were roughing it a little bit. And I just remember Jerry getting a few burns in a bar. I don't know if I really want to go into that, but he got burnt a little bit. One of the guys from Burnley, his party piece was he used to open up his shirt and put Zambuca on his hairy chest and light it, and there used to be this blue flame going. Jerry decides he wants to have a go, off with the shirt, and he's got like this oak tree on his chest, and everyone's putting Zambucas and EOS specials and B-52s on his chest, and you know what's coming next. Someone lit it, and it went up like a rocket. And I think it was one of Barnsley's prize assets that was going up in smoke in this bar on this island, Backpackers Island. And that was probably one of the funniest things I ever saw, was seeing him go up like that. But it was a bit surreal because there was a lot of clubs watching him then, and I think he was due to go to either West Ham, I think, and we're watching him, or Villa. And here's Jerry that's got third-degree burns. We had to actually get him on a boat and take him to Athens to have his fingers were all swelling up, and he had to have his ring cut off, and it was a mess. And I remember Danny phoning up saying, "How's the holiday, guys? And can I speak to Jerry?" And I said, "We said, yeah, it's going great." It wasn't going great because it was coming to the end, and Jerry was nearly burnt alive, and he had to go for a medical. He had to come back and go for a medical at Villa, and I think he failed it, and he came back to do another year. So Barnsley fans would probably have to thank me for that. They got another year out of him because he didn't go to Villa, and he ended up going to Bolton in the end. But the first holiday with Jerry was a blast, and that was probably one of the funniest things I can remember him from.
And I know you mentioned this Barnsley legend a few times, but what are your memories of Remo?
Remo was the father figure in the club. He was a go-to guy that you could go and see him, and if you needed someone to listen to you, he was very supportive of everyone. He did every job at the club. He was a proper man. We loved him. We loved him for everything, really. The shenanigans he got up with clubs that would, so for example, Millwall came one midweek and it was pounding with rain, it was freezing cold, and Remo would turn off the heating in the away dressing room and give them crappy balls and some tea that was a bit, cold, sandwiches that had been around for 2 days. So that was Remo's welcome, and so he would do little things like that would make us laugh. But he was a proper man, really. He was Mr. Barnsley. I have fond memories of Remo. Great man. Everyone respected him. He was a wonderful fella.
And what this person's probably more along with Jerry Taggart lines, but what was it like being in a squad with Aaron Sheridan?
Yes. Well, he was for me, certainly as a player, he was underrated. He was a great player. He had great left foot on him. He got a second chance, didn't he, from John Benson? Me and Andy Payton used to pick him up at Bury Station, I think, and he'd always have a bacon and egg sandwich coming into training. But he was a character. He was a tough player. he signed from non-league, I think. I can't remember the team he signed from, but he was, he worked in the warehouse, so he was hungry to be a player. He was a very, very good player, Shez. You'd want him in your team. He was a tough fella. So I enjoyed playing with him, but a character for sure.
And speaking of tough fellas, a lot of players have been mentioning Eric Winstanley through these interviews. What can you remember about Eric and how he took charge of the club at times?
Training was always enjoyable and hard. We were a very, very fit team. He used to he'd love a long run. But when I think back, they talk about rondos and things like that now with teams. Eric was doing that in our day. He had, instead of boxes, he had circles, and he was ahead of his time. And it shows he was a good coach because, obviously they got promotion in the end with him, and the kids that he brought through, they mirrored his standards, and whether that's Lids and Nicky Eden or Watto, they had standards, and that all came from him. So he was a very successful coach. I enjoyed working with Eric.
And who was the best striker that you played with at Oakwell?
Best striker?
Yeah, I'd put David Curry or Andy Payton, but I just thought I'd say best striker.
Well, if you look at those two, Dave would always get you a worldy goal. He was left footer, wasn't he? So he'd get you like a really special goal. I think if I had to pick the two, and I would have to be Andy Payton. He's the typical fox in the box type. Scored goals wherever he went. He could sniff out a goal, and I would probably go with him. He was a big prolific goal scorer. I don't know how many he scored at Barnsley, but he would certainly played his part in it. He was the fox in the box. So I would probably, they were both very good, and I like both of them. But I'd probably, if I had to get one of them, it'd be Pates.
Yeah, he scored a hatful. Who's the hardest player you played against, or the player that you had the biggest battles with?
The hardest, toughest battles really. Batty was always a tough one. Martin Allen at West Ham, he wasn't the easiest to play against, but the hardest would have been, it's got to be Billy Whitehurst. That's every player's nightmare. Just didn't want to be around him. You were dreading it if the gaffer said to you, you got to pick him up for corners. You just didn't. He was a bully. He was a Terminator. I remember him playing Sheffield United, coming down the tunnel, and Jerry was only young then, about 20, and he slapped the ball out of Jerry's hand in the tunnel and gave him a clip round the ear and said, "Right, Tags, let's get it on the field." He's only young, Jerry. Just probably was part of making Jerry the player he is. But I was glad he had to deal with him, not me. But it had to be Billy Whitehurst for me.
Yeah, you're not the only person to mention Billy Whitehurst. So that's quite funny.
He's surreal. I think if you could, you never wanted any eye contact with him. If he saw any weakness in you and he hunted you out, and I think that's probably what he was trying to do with Jerry, was intimidate him, and but Jerry never backed down. I think I can remember that game. It was really cold and rainy. It was horrible, and that was a heavyweight challenge for sure.
So you might have already answered this with the Jerry Taggart on fire story, but what's your funniest moment from your Barnsley days?
Funniest moment? There was a few. Our Christmas dues were legendary. I can remember those. They were fancy dress. They were comical. There was always something that came out of that. I don't know what they're like now. Probably a bit different, but they were legendary in those days. I think one of the funniest things I remember, a physio, Steve, I forgot his surname, bought a new car and he parked it up outside the ground. It was after a home game. And I think Lee Butler stole his car keys and opened up his boot and filled it full of all the horse manure that was left on the road. And then closed it and gave him his keys back. It's a brand new car, I think. and it was in there for 2 days. And he said he's driving home, his eyes were watering. He didn't know what was going on in his car. Pneumonia was in his car, and he opened up his boot, and there was all this, police horse crap in the boot. And I believe it ruined his carpet. It burnt all his carpet. So those kind of things went on all the time. That was probably one of that sticks in my mind. Lee Butler, he was a character as well.
And I was going to follow that up by saying, who are the ringleaders at the Christmas parties?
Ringleaders. Tags was the captain, so he played a big part in the organising. Lee Butler was definitely in there. Those were the two. They were the two. I was a follower, really, so I wasn't, in there organising things. I was a follower, so if those two were around, I was following those two. So I would definitely go for Lee Butler and Tags.
And the final question is for you to give us a short review of your time at Oakwell and how you look back on it. But before you do that, I couldn't not read out some of the comments that we got when we went out asking for questions. So I'm just going to read 4 or 5 off now because they were just so positive. So one of them is, not sure this counts as a question, but he's one of my all-time favourite players, and I loved how he celebrated every goal like it was a World Cup winner. Another one is, I can't recall any Barnsley player who covered more ground during 90 minutes than Brendan O'Connell. Someone else asked, how does Brendan feel about being one of the best footballers of all time, slightly better than Maradona? And then the last one that I had to include was, if I reverse my vasectomy and have a third child, would you be willing to be godfather?
I don't know how to answer that.
So I was going to say was, does that sum up some of the warm feelings that you felt from the Barnsley fans at the time?
Well, like I said, when I arrived, I kind of arrived as a squad player, and I wanted to prove myself. So I was always up against it, and I feel like I gave them 100%. They welcomed me. They welcomed me in. They're the best fans I've played in front of. They were good with me. I never really had any trouble with them. It was all positive. So my memories of Barnsley are top notch. So the fans were amazing right from the beginning when I turned up, and we used to, like I said, go in those porter cabins and go down to the social club. We interacted with them, and they could get near us, and I love that, and even we lived in the village. We were local, so we were always around the fans. And no, I've got they're brilliant people. I've got fond memories. They welcomed me into the club, and I'll always respect them for that. And hopefully I can get back in the new year, and they'll invite me in. I'll bring a couple of teams over from Canada, hopefully, and we can reminisce and get together again.
Oh, when you do come back, hopefully we'll have the fan zone open so you can come and join us in the real Redfearn's bar.
No, I would love that. Is it a free bar? Does Redders pick up the tab?
If he turned up, I think we'd buy him his drinks. Yeah.
Okay. He's not a drinker, Redders, is he? So I don't know if he.
Yeah.
But no, for sure.
And just like that, we're done. So look, absolutely brilliant, and thank you so much from every Barnsley fan watching now over the coming days for giving up your lunchtime to speak to us. Some incredible memories there. No,
thanks for having me. It's good for me to reminisce and think about the old days, I think, and just remember how close we really came to probably getting out of that league, and being with such great players that went on to achieve it, and being around that club. It's will always be part of my memories for sure. And thanks for inviting me on and reliving all of that. Thank you.
Oh no, really special to hear it all back as well and talk about some of those special goals. Well, look, that's another week of Live from Redfearn's Bar done. We're still hoping, all being well, to bring you Josh Scowen next Tuesday. Although, being honest, that one's a little complicated with everything going on right now. So keep an eye on Facebook and Twitter for updates. But on Thursday, we've definitely got Liam and Chris, the chaps behind the phenomenal Daydream Believers film, as we talk through everything from the crowdfunding, getting the match day footage, tracking down all the players, and then putting together an outstanding production that, if you've not seen it as a Barnsley fan, you really do need to see it. And actually, as a football fan in general. Look, Brendan, thanks again, and all the best with the Blizzard, the Dinos. Have I said that right? And anything else you turn your hand to in Calgary, and the golf this afternoon.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah,
good luck, no worries. All Barnsley fans. See you soon.
Yeah. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll hopefully see you all on Tuesday night.